Well, it's certainly hard to believe that Thanksgiving is right around the corner, okay? You have 2 whole weeks here to complete peer review. That's because I want you to do a thorough job of each paper, and that's because the groups are fairly large, okay? So it's a fair number of papers to read, fair number of papers to think about, fair number of papers to help with, okay? So let me back up again and talk one more time about the theory, the philosophy behind peer review. It's multi-level, okay, multifaceted. One thing, of course, I'm just trying to get you all to learn about each other's topics. And if we were in a face-to-face class, we'd do these kinds of things, okay? Maybe we would have presented the PowerPoints together. We would have looked at them, talked about the topics, had questions, that kind of thing. We would have had live group discussions about the topic, so we would have learned from each other, okay? So that's the goal here with peer review. You looked at the PowerPoints, now you'll learn a little bit more about the topics from reading the actual papers, okay? Now, another important facet, and this is the one that's hard to explain and that students often don't get, and often I do see in your writer's memos that you do get it, and oftentimes you see that maybe you don't get it, okay? But as you're doing somebody else's review, as you're looking at somebody else's paper, you cannot help but be thinking about your own paper, okay? You're actually thinking about your own writing. Maybe you're not thinking about the topic in detail, but you're thinking about writing skills in general, okay? Now, please remember, this is not a grammar exercise. That's the easy way out. That's the cop-out, okay? Don't do that. Don't say, hey, paper's great, but you got some grammar errors. Don't do that, okay? The writer knows they have grammar errors. That's up to them to find. Don't do their work for them, okay? What the writer doesn't know is how it's coming across to a reader, all right? Is it clear? Is there enough detail? Have they painted a picture, right? Have they left anything out? The writer doesn't always know that because the writer has a code inside your head, okay, where you're automatically filling in the details. You're kind of seeing with your own brain the details that might not be on the paper, but the reader doesn't get that, okay? Another thing a reader doesn't get is a reader doesn't get the paragraphs unless the paragraphs are really good. The writer kind of gets them. Say, oh, I know what I'm talking about. Click, 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 right? But to reiterate, a paragraph always begins with your own words, your own writing. Never start a paragraph with a quote. And if I see any paragraphs that start with quotes in your papers, I'll know you didn't watch this video, okay, which really surprises me, okay? I really get surprised when I realize students start looking at these videos. Not that I expect that I'm that entertaining, but I know I'm being helpful, okay? So paragraphs begin with your own writing, your own thinking, your own words, always, okay? Don't refer to your sources in your first sentence. Make the point you want to make at that point, okay? That's what the paragraph is. The paragraph is simply a single point with a lot of development, okay? The development can take the form of details. It can take the form of specific. It can take the form of paraphrases. It can take the form of summaries. And it can take the form of direct quotes from expert testimony, expert witnesses. Do not quote the gobbledygook, I call it. Don't quote the facts and figures. Don't do that. You can cite them. You still say where they came from, but don't quote them. That's boring. Don't quote boring stuff, okay? Quote the interesting stuff. Quote the philosophical stuff. Quote the stuff that adds content, that adds meaning to that paragraph, okay? Still cite anything else. Cite the numbers, cite the paraphrases, cite the summaries. That's fine. But don't quote the junk. Don't quote the boring stuff. Just quote the good stuff. And the quotes are meant not to make your point. Don't do that. The quotes are meant to supplement, to illustrate, to complement, to prove your point. The quotes are supporting information, okay? So that's pretty much a paragraph. One point that you want to make. As soon as you're feeling that you're moving on to another point, even a related point, a subpoint, okay, move to new paragraph. Readers like paragraphs, okay? We're trained from C-spot run to understand paragraphs, okay? We're trained to think of them as one unit of thought, and then we can rest. We can contemplate that unit of thought for a second. We rest. We know we can rest at the end of a paragraph, at the beginning of a paragraph, and think about what we just said, then we move on. That's what paragraphs do. So I want to see a lot of paragraphs. So as peer review, you can help your writer make sure they have good paragraphs, okay? The other thing is you need a lot of in-text citations, okay? You can't just ramble on paragraph from paragraph from paragraph without citing, okay? Because that means you're not referring to your resources. This is not an editorial. This is a research paper, right? where you're proposing an argument, you're proposing an issue of some kind, you're exploring an issue, and you have to do it based on the research. This is not your personal opinion, okay? So you have to have citing, you have to have direct references to your research in every single paragraph. So please make sure as you're doing the peer review that this is occurring. Now, I want to wrap this up, okay? I'm already over 5 minutes. Peer review is serious. I grade it very hard, okay? If you do an exceptionally good job, you give extra credit. What I'm really looking for are lists. I'm looking for bullet points, or if you want, you can do track changes or comments directly on a paper, send it back as an attachment. Either way, I'm looking for a lot of detail, a lot of specifics. Do not say, hey, I really like your paper, you did a lot of good things, but you want to check your grammar. Don't do that, okay? Once you say, now, would you look at page 3, at the top of page 3, the first paragraph? I don't feel it really begins with a topic sentence, do you? Now, okay, that's what I want you to be doing. Now, I know some students, there's always this, there's always 1 or 2 per class, right? Somebody either feels they've been offended or they're afraid to be offensive. Well, there's a way to get around this, okay, very simple. Pick 3 things that you really like about the paper and state them clearly, state them with details, okay, state them with specifics, right? Then you say, now on the other hand, here's a couple issues I'd like to go over with you, please, and then start to list them, all right? So a lot of it's in your tone and a lot of it's in the way you start, okay? Peer review is not meant to be offensive, all right? And even if somebody does offend, they don't mean that. Nobody's trying to be offensive. They're trying to help you, okay? Because I'm not reading these papers first and telling you how to do it, okay? I'm not doing that, okay? I want you to do the work. I want you all to work together. This is how the real world works. You don't have a boss who sits around and tells you how to do your work. They don't do that, okay? So this is up to you to get it right. You often work in groups in the real world, okay? And that's what the peer review is. You're working in a group to get it just right. Then you turn it in. That's it, okay? So that's what we're doing here. So if you have questions, get a hold of me, but time's short. Please be familiar with the course calendar, okay? Do not put off peer review to the last minute. It doesn't do you any good, okay? There's a lot of people in your groups. I've seen a lot of good stuff so far. So get the peer review done in a timely fashion, please. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of me. Okay? Thanks.